Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about our updated top 24 Dynasty defensive tackles with tiers. We're including rookies from this most recent class, and based on some feedback, we're going to be doing things in reverse. Typically, we've done tier 5 to tier 1. Joe doesn't like it, but we're going to try it out. We're going to go from tier 1 down to tier 5.
Got to keep the people guessing, Steve.
Hike!
All right, Joe. So why don't you start us off in tier number 1? Who do you got there?
All right, tier number 1. So at number 1, I've got Jeffery Simmons. At 2, DeForest Buckner. 3, Quinnen Williams. 4, Christian Wilkins. And at number 5, Chris Jones.
Okay. So it looks like from what I might remember, you have some similar players since last time. Number 1, I have Quinnen Williams. 2, Christian Wilkins. 3, Jeffery Simmons. 4, Chris Jones. 5, DeForest Buckner. And 6, Jalen Carter. All right, Joe, so let's talk about Jeffery Simmons, the man who's on the top of your board. If they hadn't watched the most recent episode when we did defensive tackle rankings, you had him ranked 1 before, and I gave you quite the blowback. As you can see, I moved him from tier 2 to tier 1. He went from 7 to 3, so I'm starting to see it your way. For those who are listening to this for the first time, why do you have Jeffery Simmons as number 1?
Yeah, just I just feel like he's one of the most dominant guys, and I feel like he's been overlooked just because he's been injured and hasn't been able to stay on the field. But just looking at his stats and where his pace was, like if he was able to keep up that pace and play a full season, he would have, surpassed the numbers of a guy like Quinnen Williams, Christian Wilkins of the world. But his sack upside is just hard to come by and hard to beat at that defensive tackle position.
Yeah, for me, what changed it was honestly the selection of T'Vondre Sweat. When you have a guy that huge taking up, the offensive line, it's going to open up spaces for Jeffery Simmons. So I think having that guy next to him is only going to help Jeffery Simmons because they might have to bring more attention to Devonte Simmons just because he's such a massive man. So I really like that for him. He really hasn't had, in my view, a counterpart that really helped him in quite some time. Obviously, he has had Harold Landry on the outside. On the inside, not as much. So I'm excited about that for Jeffery Simmons. I think it's going to open up things for that defense in general. So give me Jeffery Simmons. I think he's deserving of this top tier. The biggest thing is sometimes he hasn't been able to stay healthy, but he has the ability. And I totally understand. I don't have him 1 because for me, Quinnen Williams and Christian Wilkins, the same age as Jeffery Simmons, they've just been stronger performers over these past few years. But if you're looking for upside, I could see what you're thinking with Simmons.
Yeah. And I mean, I had Simmons there before they selected T'Vondre Sweat, but like you said, T'Vondre Sweat being on the team just increases that in my mind, because now he doesn't have to worry so much about being the big run stuffer and also rush the passer. I feel like Sweat gives him a little bit of reassurance, and he can go ahead and maybe just focus primarily on getting after the passer.
Now, of these players, the only one to have changed their situation is Christian Wilkins. No longer a Miami Dolphin. Now he's on the Las Vegas Raiders. I had a hard time kind of figuring out what his future holds. I don't know about you. I actually kind of waffled between the idea of putting Wilkins 1 and Quinnen Williams 2, because in my view, I thought Wilkins really, I don't think, his help hasn't been as, he has never played with a guy like Max Crosby. That's the bottom line. So I felt like almost, could this be better for a guy like Wilkins? But I'm like, well, he's 28 years old. I believe Quinnen Williams is 26. It's, from a dynasty standpoint, in my view, it's hard to truly put Wilkins ahead of him. But I struggled trying to figure out where, I think he definitely was a tier 1 player, no question. You saw them at 4. Did you have the same struggle as I did?
No, I didn't really have a struggle. I don't think. Regardless of where he plays, Christian Wilkins is just a great player, especially at the defensive tackle position. So I'm not really concerned with the move. It'll be interesting because him and Zach Sieler were quite the tandem in Miami, and I know he's got Max Crosby on the edge, but just curious if without some of the guys in the interior, if that changes anything for him or if that'll more so change for the guys that he's leaving behind in Miami.
One other guy I want to talk about in this tier is Chris Jones, a guy who, in my view, probably is the best pass rushing defensive tackle in the NFL. And he just signed a 5-year contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the guy has continued to be dominant. I put him ahead of DeForest Buckner because he's younger, he's got the contract in place, and he's just been dominant. Buckner has been too, but I lean more on Chris Jones. You you did not. You felt Buckner was better than Chris Jones. You put Chris Jones at 5. Do you feel that you and I are actually putting Chris Jones too low? I mean, could there be a justification that he's the number one guy just based on his true pass rush skills? You and I talk about you need a defensive tackle who can get sacks. I feel like he probably, if I had to guess off the top of my head, I probably should have looked at this earlier. If I had to bet who was the defensive tackle who's had the most amount of sacks in the past 3 years, I bet you it's Chris Jones.
Could be. I mean, I would think that Aaron Donald would have to kind of be up there as well.
That's true. I guess we're not considering Aaron. I'm not thinking Aaron Donald because he's retired.
Yeah. But it is fair. Chris Jones is definitely up there. He's a great player. But I just feel like some of these other guys can be more dominant at times, I feel like.
Then Chris Jones, really? You think he vanishes?
Not that he vanishes, but like, I don't know. I think maybe just because Kansas City has a lot of other guys, not necessarily in the interior, but there's a lot of other guys like on the back end of their defense and things like that. But he's still a great player.
Interesting. I'm not that convinced by what you're saying.
Well, I mean, we can look at his sack numbers if you want.
I'm pretty sure if you were to look right now, and we'll do a little research here, I would think that Chris Jones is going to have the most sacks over the past 3 years. I could be wrong about that. Obviously, Matabuki led the way this past year, but that was a breakout year for the guy. Chris Jones had 10.5 this past season. That was third highest in this most recent season. The year before that, he led the league with 15.5 sacks. The next closest was Quinnen Williams at 12. Then we go to the next one. This will be the test here. He then had 9 sacks, which was off of Aaron Donald, who was 12.5, and then Cam Hayward at 10. So, yeah, he clearly is the top sack getter. The other guy was actually a pretty high sack getter, believe it or not. I don't think either of you, either me or you, was going to have him on here. Is Danico Autry? He's actually he has a lot of sacks, which is very interesting. But anyways, he's an under the radar guy, I guess. But he's the top sack getter. So if we're saying the defensive tackles, you need to make a lot of sacks. Chris Jones is the obvious top sack getter. Should we have him too low?
I mean, and maybe it's just a little bit of more recency bias why I have some of these other guys higher than him. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, he is 29 years old. But defensive tackles can play. Yeah, they're right around the same age. Defensive tackles can play a little bit longer. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just like I said, recency bias.
I think I stumped you, Joe. I think I stumped you.
Yeah, I don't necessarily.
Is this a preference thing? And that's okay. I mean, it's okay just to have a preference.
I feel like I don't have a good reason for putting him at 5, but I just
you like the other guys better.
At 5. Yeah.
Well, those other guys have a better tackle for, I'm sure, if we looked at it. But let's head over to tier number 2. Who do you got there? Are you enjoying this episode right now? Well, if you are, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel or go ahead and follow us over at Spotify and Apple under the podcast name, The Salary Cap Show. If you're interested in any trade requests, head over to our X where we have a trade inquiry form where you can fill out and give us all the details you need to help us give you the best advice to make those moves.
All right, in tier 2 at number 6, I've got Jalen Carter. At 7, Justin Matabuke. 8, Derek Brown, 9, Christian Barmore, and at 10, Ed Oliver.
All right, at number 7, I've got Christian Barmore, 8, Derek Brown, 9, Justin Matabuke, 10, Ed Oliver, and 11, Byron Murphy. I was initially a little surprised because you and I have actually very similar players so far out of the gate here. Let's talk about Jalen Carter here. You've got him in tier 2. I had him in tier 1. What made you feel like he was tier 2? You feel like he just hasn't shown enough promise yet? Because, this guy, I mean, people were raving about him coming into the draft. He had a good rookie season for a defensive tackle. Well, usually it takes him a while to develop. Why did you feel like he wasn't worthy of a tier 1 spot?
Yeah, as far as Jalen Carter, Steve, I got him in tier 2. Even though he had an impressive rookie season, he only had his 1 year, which is rookie year. I'd like to see him how he does this second year before I go ahead and put him in consideration for tier 1. But I got him a respectable top of tier 2. Just didn't feel right about putting him up there at tier 1.
Just because you feel like he doesn't stack up to those elite guys, because those guys are elite. They've made it.
Yeah, not to like. I don't know if he doesn't.
I mean, could Carter go sideways, you think?
I don't know if he goes sideways. I just would like to see him do it more than 1 year. Those other guys are so proven. And like you said, have been elite players over years that I just didn't feel good about sticking a guy that's got 1 year under his belt, even though it was very impressive rookie year that he had up in tier 1.
Interesting. Other than that, Joe, you and I are pretty much on the money. I was actually kind of surprised that you had Ed Oliver in this tier. I ended up putting him here. And a part of the reason why I did was this guy's young. I want to say he's 25, 26 years old. And people are justifying Justin Matabuke being in this tier because of his breakout. But Ed Oliver had a breakout as well. So in my view, it's like, if you were excited about Matabuke's breakout, why can't you be excited about Ed Oliver's breakout as well? They're both young. They both broke out. Oliver had, a stronger first-round pedigree than Matabuke did. So I felt like he was deserving for this tier. I thought possibly it might have been me as a homer putting him in this tier, but you felt similarly as I did.
Yeah, I did. Like you said, I mean, a young player. Just going back and looking at things, because obviously I think in our original video, I definitely didn't have Ed Oliver this high. But just going back and looking at the stats and everything, and like you said, and looking at his situation, like to me, like he's the major anchor on that Bills defense. And they've got some decent edge rushers as well that could, free him up. But like you said, he had a breakout. He was honestly pretty dominant at times. So I felt like he deserved to be up here in the top 10.
Of the guys in this list, I think the guy, which obviously people could probably tell based on where I ranked him, the guy I might be most excited about is Christian Barmore. Guy really took off this past year with the New England Patriots. I just wonder, the big thing is, will he continue his ascent with Jer'Zhan Mayo being the head coach? I don't think that defense should skip a beat, because it's basically he's a Belichick disciple. So I don't think it should change. I mean, you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't expect that to change much. And I really just think Christian Barmore is going to continue to ascend, from what we saw last year. I think he'll build on that success. And to your point, I mean, Jer'Zhan Mayo was already there. He's got similar philosophies. Obviously, he's going to want to put his own stamp on the team. But as far as the defense goes, I don't think much changes. And I think this, Patriots defense, like you said, doesn't skip that beat.
8.5 sacks. I mean, it was very impressive by him. So
yeah,
I expect him to continue to ascend, in my view.
Yep.
All right, Joe. So why don't we head over to tier 3? Who do you got there?
All right. At number 11, I've got Calijah Kancey. At 12, I've got Dexter Lawrence. 13, I've got Byron Murphy. 14, Kobe Turner. At 15, Zach Allen. And at 16, I've got Daron Payne.
Wow, I'm going to have to digest that a little bit there. At number 12, I've got Jonathan Allen. 13, Dexter Lawrence. 14, Daron Payne. 15, Zach Sieler. And 16, Leonard Williams. So the audience, did not see my reaction, when you made the pick. So let's talk about, who I'm going to bring up first. I'm really surprised by the ascent of Calijah Kancey here. I think you had him in your top 24, but I want to say he was a tier 4 or a tier 5 player. You've jumped him up all the way to 11. I've yet to say him. I will. And I do like him. But I want to say you had at least Kobe Turner ahead of him. So what makes you want where's the love for Calijah Kancey coming from?
Yeah, like I said, man, I was looking at things. I think I just had him too low. I think I overlooked him at first or the original video, but just looking at it, he had a pretty good rookie year, and just the opportunity that he's got, I think he's got an opportunity to build on that rookie year, and I think he's got a lot of potential that's untapped, and I think he's going to have a pretty good year coming up here.
Interesting. I mean, he definitely could. I mean, the positive with him is he's next to Vita Vea. So Vita Vea, like we talked about with Jeffery Simmons, you've got a really huge defensive lineman that's going to eat up a lot of that offensive line, opens up some pass rush opportunities for Calijah Kancey. So I do like him a lot. Did not expect you to have him this high. Other than that, we've got some mix-up. We got some mix-up here. So talk to me about, you've got Daron Payne, but not Jonathan Allen yet. I would think that most people would find, even though Daron Payne is younger, that Jonathan Allen has been the better player over these past few years. Was it just mostly like an age factor? Or I think you've said in the past, we haven't talked about the new rookie that they have there in Jer'Zhan Newton, but I think you might be concerned of a rotation with the Commanders. Is that kind of what's leading you to not have Allen up at this point?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'll be talking about Allen a little bit later here, but definitely age came into a factor. But honestly, just as a whole, like I am concerned with Newton being drafted, just what this rotation is going to look like, how involved are these guys going to be, and ultimately like who gets affected the most. Because it's not, just being 3 deep. You and I watching the draft, we were pretty puzzled by the Jer'Zhan Newton pick, honestly, when you have guys like Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, and you've gone ahead and they've paid these guys.
And they drafted Fedarian Mathis too. He was a guy, he was no slouch either. They thought that he could be an upside pick. Now, obviously, different regime, different general manager, different coach. Unfortunately for Fedarian Mathis, I think his opportunity for the Commanders is going bye-bye. But I mean, he'll compete in training camp. We'll see what happens. I just was a little surprised by the lack of interest by you and Jonathan Allen.
I wouldn't call it a lack of interest, Steve. I've got him, and it's not that much higher. But part of it was just, looking at it from our league perspective as well. And not only is he 2 years younger, but he outperformed him as well. So I gave Daron Payne a little bit of a boost.
Interesting. Now, how about a guy like Zach Allen? If I'm not mistaken, you did not have him in your top 24, and you turned it right around, and now you got him at 15. That surprised me.
Yeah, I think I did have him in my top 24. He just was low.
I'm almost positive you didn't, because I was very surprised that you didn't.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I didn't. I thought I had him on there just lower. But he's another guy,
You've just been disappointed with him in the past. I think you were hoping more from him.
I think that was part of the problem. I was just removed from the season. He was a big signing for the Broncos. I was excited. He was a bit disappointing on the team. But I think, and I was expecting him to do a little bit better just because he did reunite with Van Joseph, who he was with Arizona as well. But I still think there's potential. He didn't have a terrible season. And I just think, there's less. Well, the Broncos did add some interior guys for some depth and rotation. And honestly, maybe that'll help him just be able, keep him fresher and for those pass rushing opportunities that he could have.
All right, Joe. So let's head over to tier 4. What do you got there?
All right. At number 17, I've got Javon Hargrave. 18, I've got Jonathan Allen. 19, Zach Sieler. 20, Braden Fiske. And at 21, Brian Brezzy.
Okay. At 17, I've got Jer'Zhan Newton. 18, Calijah Kancey. 19, Kobe Turner. And 20, Brian Brezzy. So one thing I'm a little surprised about is you've yet to say Jer'Zhan Newton, so you have Braden Fiske ahead of Jer'Zhan Newton. Is that what I'm seeing here?
That is correct. That is what you're saying.
Wow. Can you explain to me why you like Braden Fiske ahead of Jer'Zhan Newton?
Just strictly for playing time purposes, I think Braden Fiske has a more opportunity for playing time alongside Kobe Turner than Jer'Zhan Newton. We kind of talked about it. He's got two guys blocking him. There's going to be rotation. Who knows how much playing time the three of them get.
So then why
that's-
didn't you had Braden Fiske right in your lap in the rookie draft, and you didn't take him, and you have him ranked as the 20 Dynasty defensive tackle?
I didn't not take him because I don't believe in him. And my dynasty team, I need offensive players and young offensive talent because
Who do you have at defensive tackle? You have Charles Omenihu, who knows what's going to happen with him, and Aleem McNeil. That's it. And you have to start two defensive tackles.
Right, but I'm in a rebuild. My offense is bare bones, and I can find defensive tackles. People are willing to get rid of those. You know what they're not willing to get rid of? Young running backs and wide receivers, and that's what I've done with my first couple of picks.
I see. I don't get me wrong. I do like Braden Fiske, but I'm not thinking about this as short-sighted as you are. I think that Newton, during the depth of his career, maybe year 4, year 5, he'll take over and he'll be dominant. I don't know I can't know if I could say the same. I mean, Braden Fiske could be good. I just don't know if he has the ceiling that Jer'Zhan Newton has.
I tell you what, man, I was obviously I was impressed by Braden Fiske in the Senior Bowl. I just think his
not enough apparently
pass rushing ability and his sack numbers could be there. I was a fan of Kobe Turner. Took him in the rookie draft last year. You hated that pick.
I hated that. Yeah,
turned out to be good. Now, mind you, he did get sniped from the practice squad. Which I'm very upset with, but.
Yeah. Now, one other guy here that I'm a little. Well, let's talk about Zach Sieler first. He's a guy I had rated higher than you. 15, you have him at 19.
Yep.
He's an under the radar guy. Nobody talks about him, but he's the type of guy, Joe, that I think he could be sneaky good. I mean, does he take over the Christian Wilkins role? Does he just have a ton of tackles? I think this guy could have a career year this upcoming year.
Yeah, I didn't, he was such a tough player for me because he's been so productive. I'm just worried that partially what made him so good was the fact that Wilkins was alongside of him.
And I could totally see that.
Open those opportunities up. So I'm curious to see what he does on his own. And is he able to still kind of create the plays that he was creating, if he is getting double teamed? Because I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't think teams were like, hey, let's double team Zach Sieler. They were focusing on Christian Wilkins. So now that he could be the focus of the defense, up front, could that change things for him?
Now, I'm almost pretty positive that you did not have Javon Hargrave in your top 24 last time. But you got him here now at 17.
Correct, yes. I don't know if I had him in or not, Steve. But.
Next time when we do this, we're going to make sure that we have it on handy so that when we talk about who you have. But based on my memory, I don't think that you did not have him. But now you do. You certainly didn't have him this high. What brought him higher in your mind? Yeah, because I think you had been concerned in the past about that 49er defensive line.
I was, and I still think he was disappointing, but he should be better just because of all the people that they have on the defensive line, because of the people that they have outside. He should be able to do more with the matchups, and I'm maybe it's just with the second of year's team. I'm thinking that he could potentially be better, and I think before I was just too hard on me being disappointed that he didn't have a good year his first year as a San Francisco 49er.
All right, let's round it out, Joe. Who do you got in tier number 5?
In tier 5 at 22, I've got Leonard Williams. At 23, I've got Grady Jarrett. And at 24, I've got Devonte Wyatt.
Okay, at 21, I've got Zach Allen. 22, Javon Hargrave. 23, Darius Robinson. And then 24, Devonte Wyatt. So a little more shallow of a tier 5 here for you, Joe. We already talked about Zach Allen and Hargrave. Let's talk about Devonte Wyatt. I actually was surprised that you had him in there, because I think the last time we talked, you were kind of like, why you got Devonte Wyatt in there? But you must have saw something that led you to think that he's deserving to be in this top 24.
Yeah, I was just looking at the options for 24, and I listened to your argument, Steve. I think you ended up convincing me after the last one that I should have this guy in there, and just his opportunity and his age, I think he's deserving at this 24 spot.
The only thing that is concerning with him is they have a couple defensive tackles that they are rotating in. They've got Carl Brooks. They've got Tadaro Slayton, I think is his name. They also have Kenny Clark there. So they got a couple of guys. But he, to me, is the best as far as pass rush ability for the
Right.
Packers interior defensive line. If there's one guy of this group from a potential standpoint, I think this guy could really take off in year 3. Year 3, year 4, that's when defensive tackles can really start to kind of come on.
Yeah.
I think this could be the time where he really takes off. Last year I was talking about Derek Brown. I thought he was going to have a really good year. He had this huge jump. I think this could be Wyatt's year. I could be wrong. It might be a year early. Might be one more year after this. But I think he's got a great opportunity this year.
Yeah, I think he does as well. And we know that, Kenny Clark's not long for the that job with the Packers. So, I think he's going to end up taking over that spot as the main guy of this Packers defense. And like you said, it's just a matter of for Wyatt, will it be this year or maybe it is another year. But in the near future, Wyatt should be able to take the next step.
Now, one thing that's very apparent to me is I know we were really focusing on Braden and Fiske when we were talking earlier. You don't have Jer'Zhan doing it all in your top 24. How is that possible?
Well, you want heavy rookies.
This is a Dynasty rankings,
I get that it is Dynasty, but I guess, how long of an outlook do we need? I mean, we know that these guys take 3 to 4 years, and I think I have a hard time.
You'd rather have Grady Jarrett?
Right now?
Coming off, I think, was an Achilles tear, or was it? He's pretty old on top of it.
Yeah, I get it, Steve, but I think I have a hard time because even in Dynasty, I'm always trying to compete and win now.
I know you do.
In a lot of these rookies, we know how long it can take for these defensive tackles to develop. It can take 3 to 4 years. Where you could plug in and play a guy like Grady Jarrett, and when he has been healthy, he gives you that sack upside. We've seen him be a monster amongst the defensive line group. So I think for me, that's kind of why I didn't have a couple of those rookies that you did. But I understand why you included them in yours.
I just think the big thing is Newton. He obviously was injured during the whole combine and kind of that rookie process before getting drafted. Had he not been, I think he would have been a first-round pick. I really do. I think he was a really, really good player. I think he's honestly comparable to even Byron Murphy. But I just think Byron Murphy's landing spot is way better than Jer'Zhan Newton's. Like you said, you've got Payne and Allen in front of him. So that makes it tough.
Yeah. I think that played a lot of part in it. Had Jer'Zhan Newton had gone somewhere else, if he went to Miami per se, and he'd have the opportunity there, he'd be in my top 24. But because he went to the Commanders, it takes a little bit for these guys to develop. And then got 2 monster guys ahead of him, and they perform well. I just don't know how much playing time the guy actually gets.
Now, the other rookie, Darius Robinson, he's a tough one. Depending on leagues, he was a kind of a tweener. Is he an edge rusher? Is he an interior defensive lineman? And in our league, we break it out as edge rusher and interior defensive line. So you're going to have, it's more true position, right? So think about a TJ Watt would be listed as a linebacker, but really he's an outside linebacker. He's an edge rusher. So for us, Darius Robinson, by all accounts, looks to be an interior defensive lineman for the Arizona Cardinals. Do you think, what was your reasoning for not, because I think you like him. I know he's kind of an under the radar guy. Just one of those things that you feel like could take a while to develop, because I think he's going to be the starter from day one.
Yeah, I like Darius Robinson. I think he's interesting. Just a matter of we got 24 spots, and I just felt like these guys were, a notch above. I mean, the potential is there. We just obviously haven't been able to see it in the NFL yet.
Would you rather have Newton or Darius Robinson?
For immediate success, I would rather have Robinson.
Long term?
Long term, you could give that edge to Newton probably, but I mean, I think it's tough. We haven't seen these guys play in the NFL. I know what they do collegiately and whatnot, but it's a whole different animal when these guys transition to the NFL and how that whole process works. But I think, Newton being able to learn behind the guys like Allen and Payne could do wonders for him in his long-term success.
So that does it for our updated top 24 defensive tackle dynasty rankings with tiers for IDP, and we included some rookies, more so myself than Joe. Obviously, I like to.
You still didn't have Braden Fiske in your top 24.
Yeah. But I had Darius Robinson, Byron Murphy, and Jer'Zhan Newton. So I had more than you did.
No, you did. You had 2 more than me.
No, 1 more.
Just 1 more?
Yeah, because I had Darius Robinson, I had Jer'Zhan Newton, and then I had Byron Murphy. You had Byron Murphy and Fiske.
Okay, that's right.
So you got to get your math right there, Joe.
Yeah, I forgot we had one guy similar, so.
We didn't really talk Byron Murphy, but that's okay. We'll be talking about them, I'm sure, as their career blossoms. And Joe will see more game tape in the NFL, and he'll feel better about them and feel more likely to put them in the top 24. So I have high confidence that Newton and Darius
just
Robinson
be more vindicated, Steve.
Yeah. In our next episode, we're going to be doing the same process, but we're going to be talking about IDP's favorite position, the linebackers. You're not going to want to miss that. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.